We will now proceed to the second session of today's conference. Under the theme, Prospects and Roles of Asia, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area. Let's welcome our moderator, Dr. Lin Jianhai, IFF Vice President, Director of IFF Global Center, and former Secretary of the IMF. Jianhai.
Thank you very much, Casey. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. So wonderful to see so many old friends, but also meeting a lot of new friends. And by looking at how meeting organizing team move things around, but including by lifting curtains so quickly, efficiently, effectively, you can imagine, right, and how much efforts they have put into organizing such a conference. So therefore, let me first sincerely thank three meeting organizers, IFF, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and also Hong Kong Academy of Finance for their great efforts for hosting this meeting conference. Particularly, I would like to thank the Hong Kong Monetary Authority for providing such a beautiful conference venue. And I cannot imagine if we can find any place which is this beautiful. Probably not. Therefore, we should come here more often. And so this is the session 2. So we'll discuss the prospects for and the role of Asia, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area. In this session 1, we already discussed the broader issues concerning globalization and the geopolitical and economic dimensions of the world economy. So in this session, our topics will be more specific, more focused. Let me just give a few very brief remarks about Asia. So as we all know, Asia has been the major beneficiary of globalization in the past 50 years. And Asia is expected to lead the global economy in the next decades. I don't know whether 50 years or more. Looking back, Asia has grown so much faster than the rest of the world. So here I'd like to give you 5 sets of numbers. In developing Asian economies, that exclude Japan, Australia, real GDP per capita in 1960 was just a little over $300. Today, over $5,000. The share of GDP of these economies in 1960 then was just 4% of the global economy. Today, 25%. Life expectancy was just 45 years then, now 72. Average years of schooling at that time was only 3.5, so 3.5 years. Today, 9. And finally, very important number, the extreme poverty rate was about 70% in 1980, not 1960, only 1980. But today, 7%. Without is a very important 0. What are achievements? So the IMF recently projected that Asia will grow 4.6% in 2023, compared with 2.8% globally. And this means that Asia will likely contribute 70% to the total world growth this year. China will likely contribute 1/3 of the global total. So this means that Asia remains a bright spot in this gloomy world economy we're all facing today. Now, looking ahead, all of us in this audience, probably many more beyond our room, would like to know how Asia will fare in this highly uncertain global environment. What are the major challenges facing the Asian economy in the next decade and beyond? And how will geoeconomic fragmentation affect Asia, particularly reflecting Asia's close integration in the world economy. So against this background, our session now will focus on three sets of questions. First, how can Asian economies, which rely so heavily on global links, trade, investment, people, technology, adapt to the changing global landscape? So that's about Asia. Two, what is likely to be the future role of Hong Kong as a major international financial center? How can Hong Kong evolve into a knowledge and innovation-based center? What can Hong Kong do to maintain and enhance its competitiveness in today's world? So that's about Hong Kong. Three, what are the strategic priorities of the Greater Bay Area? How should the importance of the Greater Bay Area be developed and enhanced as a financial and digital hub? How can Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area work together to achieve their mutual benefit and also mutual development? So that's about Greater Bay Area, Asia, Hong Kong, and the Bay Area. Now, with this as a background, I'll be so happy to invite Mr. Zhihong to come to stage to give his initial remarks. So Mr. Lai is currently Vice Mayor of Guangzhou Municipal People's Government. So he will come here on the stage to talk about developments in Guangzhou, but also Greater Bay Area for about 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you, Mayor Lai.
Distinguished Han Shenzhong, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to attend today's inauguration of the IFF Hong Kong Center and participate in this session about the prospects and roles of Asia, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area. On behalf of the Guangzhou Municipal Government, I would like to congratulate on this event. And I would also like to thank all the guests and the financial institutions for your long-term support for Guangzhou's development. So for today, I would like to share with you some thoughts on the prospects of roles of Asia, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area. And I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce to you what we have done in Guangzhou, especially the development in Nansha District on the financial front. In recent years, Guangzhou continued to place its financial work in a prominent position, and we have achieved remarkable results in terms of high-quality financial development. Last year, the added value of financial industry reached 259 billion yuan, up by 7.2% year-on-year. The tax revenue of financial industry reached 49 billion RMB, accounting for 8.8% of the city's tax revenue. At the end of December last year, the total assets of financial industry exceeded 10 trillion RMB. The scale of the local and foreign currency deposit exceeded 8 million RMB for the first time. The scale of loans reached almost 7 trillion RMB. And the accumulated balance of insurance funds invested in Hong Kong exceeded 1 trillion yuan. So we rank top of the list in the cities in China. And there were 246 listed companies in the city, the National Green Financial Forum and Innovation Pilot, the National Climate Investment and Financing Pilot, and the National Digital RMB Pilot, as well as the National Financial Technology Pilots, are all implemented in Guangzhou. And at the same time, we have the risk compensation mechanism for inclusive loans, the governmental financing guarantee system, and the market-based sub-loan mechanism being implemented in Guangzhou. And we attach great importance to the inclusive finance for small and medium-sized companies. In the first quarter of this year, we have achieved a very good start for Guangzhou's financial industry, achieving an added value of 70 billion RMB, up by 8.9%, higher than the average growth rate of the whole country. And we ran the first among the 6 major cities in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Tianjin, and Chongqing. The balance of deposits and loans in local and foreign currencies increased by 10.7% and 11.8% respectively. In general, Guangzhou's financial comprehensive strengths have been greatly enhanced. The quality and the efficiency of financial services to real economy has also been greatly enhanced. The momentum of financial reform and innovation has been released. The financial industry has become the 4th pillar industry and the 5th largest tax source industry in the city. And we continue to see the financial industry playing a major role in Guangzhou's high-quality development. As we know that in the past 3 years, we were under the impact of COVID, and the economic development was at a very slow pace, but we have maintained a very good momentum for the growth of financial services in Guangzhou. And at the same time, we have attached great importance to the cooperation with Hong Kong and Macau to promote the building of the international financial hub in the Greater Bay Area. And we have set up more than 34 business institutions in Hong Kong, in Guangzhou from Hong Kong, and the total assets of Hong Kong funded banks in Guangzhou are around 130 billion yuan. 79 Guangzhou enterprises have been listed in Hong Kong, accounting for 30% of the total numbers of the listed companies in Guangzhou.
Now, for Guangzhou enterprises, they particularly like to seek a listing in Hong Kong. In the general outline of the Greater Bay Area plan, it talks about the building a model zone for comprehensive cooperation between Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau in Nansha, and to also service the GBA International Commercial Bank to serve this region. So just at the beginning, Mr. Li Ka-chao has already covered about the development of a financial center in Nansha, and this has been discussed and highly supported. Last year, the Guangzhou Future Exchange, which Hong Kong has a stake, had been up and running. It will become a very important financial infrastructure based in the GBA and serving the GBA, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative and green development. This would be the 5th exchange approved by the nation. As you know, there hasn't been any major approval for the last couple of years. So this actually marks a very important milestone for infrastructure development of Guangzhou as far as finance institution is concerned. The Guangzhou Futures Exchange has already been successful in launching industrial silicon as a trading commodity. and it is also the first new energy metals exchange platform. And this year, we will be launching a lot more new commodities and new commodities for exchange. Last June, the State Council issued the master plan for Nansha to deepen comprehensive cooperation among Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau with a global perspective. So it aims at building Nansha to be a very important strategic platform, and also serves the continuous extension of mutual access and mutual connection amongst the Bigger Bay Area. So this has already been included as very important projects and targets. And there are already very, very specific plans that have been put in place. The Bigger Bay Area, Big Bay Area Insurance Service Center is also being built, and also FT Free Trade accounts, Wealth Management Connect, QFLP, and QDLP pilot programs are also being actively promoted with very good results. This would provide high support to cross-border capital flows in the Bigger Bay Area. And apart from that, in 2007, the IFF, International Finance Forum, has its permanent venue set up in Nansha, as we have seen in the video, and it has already consecutively held 6 high-level conferences and dialogues. So it is a very international event. This year, our IFF Hong Kong Center being inaugurated in Hong Kong also speaks for a further connection between Guangzhou and Hong Kong in the financial sector. It will continue to build ourselves as a human resources nurture ground and a very important drive. Looking into the future about deepening financial cooperation in the GBA, especially between Guangzhou and Hong Kong, this would provide a stronger and more efficient finance pillar and support to the nation's development. In the last month, Chairman Xi has been to Guangdong province, Guangzhou in particular, and during his visit, he had pointed out that the GBA has a very strategic position in the new development plan of the country, and it ought to be a strategic pivot and a high level model to the development and modernization of China. And it also pointed out that Guangzhou has to take further active role in the GBA and also play the role of a pioneer and a leading position. So it has this is a historic opportunity offered to Guangzhou, and at the time, the various teams are already studying and implementing the instructions of Chairman Xi, and has put the promotion of GBA into a much more important and strategic position, and also to build a modernized industry and to accelerate the opening and development of Nansha to build a first-class international business environment, and also to promote new growth drivers. We believe that the very rich industry basis and the high quality development that the GBA has, it as well, especially Guangzhou, it's going to contribute in a big way to the GBA development. And upcoming, we would continue to implement the the spirits and teachings of Chairman Xi to keep the risk management well, to develop quality development, and also to promote Hong Kong in its strengthening of its role as an international financial center, and also to build the GBA as an international financial hub. And I take this opportunity in the following areas to talk about how to deepen financial cooperation with Hong Kong. The first one is to support the development of key platforms, just like the one that we had just now talked about. The Guangzhou Futures Exchange, we ought to build a first-class futures exchange, and we should also join hands in building the GBA International Commercial Bank, as well as the GBA Insurance Service Center, and also to promote and build Nansha. The second one would be to promote financial market interconnection in an orderly fashion. Today, Mr. Yu is here, and we are particularly honored because he has on his shoulder several of the very important responsibilities of roles as a regulator, and we highly anticipate Mr. Yu to come to Nansha and Guangzhou and see for himself, and we would continue to support all his efforts. So we should strengthen the compatibility of rules in the financial sector in the GPA, promoting QDLP, QFLP, and also other cross-border financial pilots, and to deepen the green and sustainable financial cooperation in the GBA, to include promoting the research and mutual recognition of reference of green finance standards, and to also build a carbon market in the GPA to support the low carbon and sustainable development of the GBA. Now, this is something that has been placed as an emphasis, and it is also at the very forefront of the goals of Guangzhou's development. This includes the green bonds and carbon emission transactions. Now, these are some of the very leading development in the country, and we would also deepen our financial exchanges and cooperation. We will strengthen the financial exchanges and cooperation by leveraging platforms such as the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, as well as the HSBC Global Training Center. Now, we would rely on these academia in Hong Kong and in Guangzhou to do this, and I have already introduced to Mr. Yu that last year we had two academia starting in Nansha, the one being the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. The other one is the Hong Kong Students Center. So we will continue to accelerate in our efforts in nurturing financial high caliber talents, which is a very evident strength of Hong Kong. And we would, of course, lean on the International Finance Forum, the Hong Kong Monetary Association, as well as other financial platforms to build the Greater Bay Area financial talents building, and also to enhance Guangzhou's influence and role in the GBA area. And last but not least, I look forward to the regulators in Hong Kong to support the financial development of Guangzhou, as you have always done, and also support the financial development of GBA and its further opening. I look forward to some very good suggestions and ideas from you. So I wish you all the best and wish the event a great success. Thank you.
really informative and substantive remarks regarding the recent developments in the financial sector in Guangzhou and the Greater Bay Area, and also the prospects for further progress in the years ahead. You also have outlined 3 priorities for further progress, further developments, and further cooperation between Guangzhou, Greater Bay Area, and also Hong Kong. Very exciting. So with that, again, thank you very much. So can I now invite our panel speakers to come on the stage? Our panel speakers, yeah, please, Eddie, yes, and Nicolas. Thank you very much to the panel. And so you can see that the people move things around very quickly, very nicely. So let me introduce very briefly our great panel here. So to my left is Li Tong. Li Tong is the IFF board member, CEO and executive president, Bank of China International. Then next is Eddie. Eddie, I don't think Eddie needs any introduction. So he's the chief executive of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And next is Professor Song Ming. Professor Song is the IFF academic committee member, and he's also the dean of the IFF Institute. And then Nicolas Tissot, right? Nicolas Tissot is the chief financial officer of CLP Holdings. So great panel. Now, given the time constraint, if you don't mind, I'll basically move right into our 3 questions. Question number 1, given this strategic competition environment or global geo-economic and political fragmentation environment, so how can Asia adapt to this environment? What can Asia do, right, to maintain its competitiveness in the years and the decades ahead? So that's about Asia. Okay, with that, Tong, let me turn it to you first, followed by Eddie and Song Ming and also Nicolas.
Okay, thank
Tong,
you.
please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Very honored to be invited by IFF again. This is if I remember correctly, it's my first IFF. So 2 times in Guangzhou, 1 in Beijing. And this one is the first time in Hong Kong. So very delighted to see IFF can be held here. I noticed that many friends from mainland. So if I may, I would address in Chinese. Okay.
So back to your question about the roles of Asia. As we have been players in this market for a long time, and Asia has been facing 3 challenges in general. The first challenge is that about the volatility in the financial market. In the short term, the developed economy will have a very tight financial liquidity, which has been lasting in the past 18 months. And it has led to some financial crisis and some incidents among the banking system. So what does it have to do with Asia? For developed economies, as we know, are the demand side and also the main source of investment funds. The weakening of the developed countries, of course, will have an impact on Asia's economy. And the second challenge is that several guests have mentioned about deglobalization, which is nothing new. And we have seen disruptions in the supply chain, and some of it is called reshoring and many other new terms. And it has a lot of impact on Asia as well, because Asia is a very, very important part of the global supply chain. And the third challenge is about green development. Green development is a global consensus now. And the developed countries are now exploring the rules setting for green development. I hope that there won't be any barriers set up for green development to Asian countries, because a lot of Asian countries are still big consumer of energy. But of course, it would take us some time to see the development of green industry. But fortunately, Asia has been developing quite stably in terms of the financial industry. And I would like to share with you some figures from IMF. In 2022, the GDP growth for Asia has been risen from 3.8% to 4.6% in 2023, higher than 2.8% for the global GDP growth rate. So Asia has been a growth driver for the world's economy, accounting for 70% of the world economic growth. So this is very good for Asia. And in the past decade, we have seen multilateral cooperation mechanism in Asia, such as Belt and Road Initiative and RCEP, or TPP and DPA. But of course, the scale is still small, but this is the trend in Asia. And this is very good for the regional development in Asia. And last year, we know that the pandemic was still raging in a lot of regions, but we have seen resilience in Asia. For example, in 2020, the Asian trading volume with China has grown by 15%, creating good conditions for the regional development. But how do we cope with the uncertainties in the future and enhance our resilience? And our two speakers before have mentioned, and also Mr. Ling has mentioned, that we are the biggest benefactor of globalization. And for Asia, we will continue to remain open to the world. And this would be consistent for us. We need to uphold globalization. And we need to have better dialogues and conversations with the rest of the world. Just like IFF, we are here to promote mutual understanding, conversation, and mutual trust. And we also need to have cooperative mechanism with developed economies. And I believe this is a very practical measure to cope with deglobalization. So openness is very important. Secondly, we need to utilize the multilateral mechanism that we already have in this region to strengthen our economic and trade cooperation. China has participated in several mechanisms, and we have been implementing Belt and Road Initiative for 10 years, which is quite remarkable. In 2023, after 3 years of pandemic, we have recovered the resilience of our economy. And some estimated that the Chinese economy will grow beyond 5%. So what does that mean? It means that our contribution to the world's economy would account for 1/3 of the world's economic development. And China is the biggest country in Asia. So for those countries with close economic ties with China would also enjoy great economic development. Therefore, this is a very practical choice for the regional development. And in terms of technology investment, we have seen a leaping progress in the past years. And we will step up in the investment in technology and education. And we will embrace the digital development in the world. DPA has mentioned digital partnership, which is a very good initiative. This could help enhance the added value of the industries in Asia. So I believe we should take these measures to enhance the competitiveness of Asia.
Globally, and 2 strong points for Asia, and then 3 solutions to address the global challenges and also challenge facing Asia. Great, thank you so much. Eddie,
All right.
I turn to you.
Well, I'll first say a word about globalization, and then I'll talk about how the Asian economies, what they can do in the face of this trend. As both of you mentioned, globalization has been benefiting Asia a lot in the last few decades. But we should know that it's not only Asia that's benefiting from it. If you think about global economy in the last 10, 20 years, the Great Moderation, as people call it, a large part of that is actually attributed to globalization. That pushed down the cost, where you can have low inflation but strong growth. So if you take globalization away, it's a lose-lose situation. It's not really just hurting the developing economies or Asian economies. It's actually hurting back the developed economies. So it's not like globalization benefits only Asian economies. If you look at the World Economic Outlook that's just put out by the IMF, they have quite an interesting study that says if you pull in a hypothetical scenario where there is long-term fragmentation between the 2 blocks in terms of FDI flows, the output loss globally amounts to 2% of the global GDP in the long term. And that's a lot if you think about 2% of global GDP. But that's not only the only loss that's incurring. Think about it. The globalization, or any talks of it, is actually very inflationary. At a time when the global central banks are fighting inflation, growth, financial stability, it's actually adding on their burden. It will become almost impossible for them to do their job. One good news about these talks about the globalization is that it's actually, I think Professor James said it for a while. You actually don't see it in the numbers yet. If you look at the FDI flows or the China-US trade flows, it's not showing in the numbers yet. I think there are several reasons for that. One is that economies of scale in itself is good. Second, it's much easier to think about relocation of supply chains in simple industries like textile. But if you think about more complex industries like automobiles, electronic goods, moving the supply chain completely or even part of that is actually extremely hard. So there's actually a lot more tax than what's happening in reality. And to me, financial decoupling or financial deglobalization is almost impossible. the whole global financial system is so interconnected that you can't just say, hey, that's the Asian FX market and that's the non-Asian FX market. It's impossible. But one less good news about the globalization discussion is that one, it will still be around us in the next few years, at least the next few years. And secondly, you will see certain relocation, nearshoring, friendshoring of strategic sectors, that's for sure. Whether you're talking about semiconductors, AI, or technology sectors, whether it's the industry themselves or even the financing of it, FDI or loans, it will be affected. And also you might see certain changes in the shape of globalization in that you might see more regional supply chains emerging, producing in the region for the region. That might actually come in time. So we are all facing with this environment in the next few years. So what should we collectively do in Asia? I think there are three things. One is that be resilient, because all this geopolitical fragmentation at times might cause very volatile capital flows, very volatile financial market changes, that we just have to make sure that our own financial system has the ability to withstand it. What you can do is basically three things. Keep your buffers very ample in terms of, for example, foreign reserve, in terms of the buffers in the banking system. If you look around Asia, what's happening in US and Europe has not got any spill over to Asia at all. The main reason is that we keep our house in order. The regulatory system is strong, capital buffer is strong, liquidity is strong. So keeping your house in order, be resilient, is important. And the second thing that we should do collectively is be strong. You have to build your house. You have to invest in infrastructure, in talent. And by infrastructure, it's not really just the physical infrastructure. I think there's a lot of talks in the last panel about digitalization. Here, we should be building a lot more digital infrastructure, which is quite lacking in Asia. And we should also build more talents in the higher value add areas like AI, like cloud computing, like advanced manufacturing. It's not really just basic manufacturing. And the third thing that we need to do is to build more friends, get more friends. And this is what Li Tong talked about. The intra-regional, intra-Asian trade and investment has been increasing. But what we are seeing, that one area that is progressing less fast is the intra-Asian service trade. There are still a lot of barriers for service trade. Especially in future, I would imagine that there will be a lot of service trade through digital means. And if we can lower the barriers for that, if we can come up with some sort of digital standard for Asia, that will actually facilitate the intra-Asian flows. Apart from Asia, we should be talking about Middle East, even Latin America, Africa. So we should diversify our trading partners network. So I think these are what we should do. Be resilient, be strong, and build your network.
Thank you very much, Eddie. So clear, so clear. Actually, your comments and echo Tong's comments so well, right? She outlined the challenges, and you also provide solutions. And you also emphasize losing globalization is a lose-lose situation. So excellent. Thank you so much. Professor Song.
All right. Yeah. Okay. First of all, Asian is big. There's so many countries. So talking about this generally, it's kind of difficult. But I can talk this in terms of general way. First, I agree that globalization is not dead. I don't believe in this deglobalization. There may be some slowbalization due to this strategic competition between US and China, and also the recent pandemic. But globalization, the trend is still there. It's maybe slowing down because globalization has its logic, not just politically, but also market-driven, free market economy. That's a basic fundamental logic behind globalization. I think it's still there. And the second logic for that is this technology. With this internet, with this advancement in AI and etc. So this basic logic is for globalization. I can't imagine that the global economy is segmented into 2 or 3 parts with such an advancement in our information technology. It's not, it's hard to imagine that happening. So that's my first point. The second point is Asia does benefit from globalization, I totally agree. But as any country, like China, US also benefit from globalization. But why there's such anti-globalization thinking, getting so popular now? So we need to think very carefully what are possible side effects of globalization to our Asian economies. We all know that globalization benefits the whole country, but does not benefit different classes of people equally. So that's income equality issue. That's very important. And also for environment issues, as China's experience during this globalization, we benefit greatly from globalization, but we also suffered in terms of environment quality and etc. So those are the issues Asian economies need to address, given that globalization is really good for all of us, but we need to take this benefit and somehow share that more equally among people within the economies. So with that, we can continue to have this globalization. I think that's very important. I don't see that being discussed in today's session. And the third point I want to make in this issue is Asian economies need to think about the long-term strategic policies, rather than focus on short-term pressures. So there's, because of this competition between US and China, there's a great pressure for Asian economies to take a side, This is very wrong, If you take a side, this is definitely not beneficial for Asian economies in terms of long term. As I mentioned, globalization will be with us, and even China and the US may not necessarily get into a hot war. Okay, it will be a serious conflict, for sure, but not necessarily will get into, some people believe that will be a very, very serious conflict. So if you know the future, then you should think in terms of that long-term strategy. China's rise is inevitable, even with containment. It may slow down, but it's inevitable. And China's market is the biggest, one of the biggest. It will be biggest market in the world. China's technology even is getting more advanced. So Asian economies should collaborate, not just with Chinese producers, just look at the Chinese market, but also Chinese technology. We look at the data. For example, China has a biggest trading relationship with Southeast Asia countries. But in terms of technology relationship, it's not there. China still has a very close relationship with US and South Korea and Japan in terms of technology, the patents and etc. But with those other Asian economies, it's relatively lacking there. So I think that's a great opportunity for those countries to strengthen its technology relationship with China. So overall, I do believe there's still a lot of opportunities for Asian economies, given our belief in the long term. Globalization is still with us.
Thank you so much, Ming. And you described three things. Globalization is still alive. Secondly, all countries have benefit from globalization, though the gains from it have not been shared equally, and which we should address. Thirdly, still a lot of opportunities for further cooperation among Asian economies. Thank you so much. Now let me turn to Nicolas. Nicolas, please.
Thank you, Lin. Speaking last, I will try not to repeat all the ideas developed by my colleagues. Thank you, IFF, for hosting us and discussing these important topics. I think my first point was already well made, including by Lin in his introduction, which is that this part of the world, and I say that as an outsider, this part of the world has clearly strongly benefited from globalization. So participating to globalization was a very good story for that part of the world. And I remember just as an anecdote, so not quoting a lot of numbers as you did in your introduction. When I first arrived in Hong Kong back in the late 80s, I was attracted because I felt that this part of the world had the potential to participate, to enter into globalization and benefit from it, and I wanted to see that with my own eyes. And that was the very beginning of the opening of southern China. You had these cities which were the initial program of opening of Chinese economy, and we see that we are really further down the road, and we've had the introduction on what Guangzhou is doing, and it's quite impressive when you think of where we were 40 years ago. So I would like to express that yes, globalization is alive and kicking, and it's certainly still part of the future of that part of the world, and it's still an opportunity, a further opportunity for this part of the world. And I think we are also in a region, and we have in China long-term vision, and I think it's really important that we sort of harness globalization in a positive way. But I'm quite optimistic that with the long-term vision in this part of the world, and it's not always the case in other parts of the world, maybe why this part of the world has done very well with globalization. I think careful planning is going to be important, and I will not dwell on what the Chinese government has announced in terms of vision and way forward, but that's clearly part of building a new era of globalization, or new cycle of globalization. And globalization, when you think about it, was a very long-term trend. What is called first globalization happened in the 19th century, and then there was different cycles. And I think we are, I'm an optimistic, and I want to be today cautiously optimistic about the next round of globalization. And I think what I would like to mention in terms of the challenges we will be facing are basically two things. The first one is clearly overcoming the geopolitical tensions. That's a challenge to globalization. That's a challenge to peace. That's a challenge to the development of our economies. And certainly, economies are already very intertwined, including the heart of the current tensions, meaning the US and China are actually, when you think about it, very intertwined. So we should leverage what the business is doing to help geopolitics be managed in a positive way. And we know that we are in a world with currently even hot wars in Ukraine. So tension does exist, but I think we all have a responsibility in managing this tension, because it can kill the economy, it can kill the next round of globalization. The second challenge I would like to mention is that the new globalization is not going to be a deglobalization. I agree with the other speakers. It's going to be a sustainable globalization. So I think we realize that some parts of globalization didn't make sense in terms of sustainability. And as an energy company, we are clearly acutely aware of that. We need to move to building a globalization that's going to be actually sustainable. So we certainly need to be more selective on what we do with globalization. For example, importing or exporting goods at the other end of the world in a totally nonsensible way. So we need to be more selective, but I think we are in the process of creating a new world, more sustainable, cleaner, and which will allow to continue globalization in a sustainable way. I'm thinking of things as straightforward as transportation, for example. When we will have hydrogen flights, when we will have boats which will no longer emit CO2 based on new technology, we will be able to continue to help the world benefit from the optimization brought by globalization. So I'm reasonably, yes, optimistic on how we will be able to master these challenges, overcome these challenges, and move forward to a new cycle of prosperity for the world.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. So let's move on to the second set of questions. Casey, the good thing of having conferences in this room is we don't have a clock. So I'm losing track of the timing. But I might need to borrow a few minutes, with your permission and Eddie's permission, from the dinner time. Might borrow a few minutes to stay in this discussion. So let's move on to the second set of questions about Hong Kong. So basically, questions are, what is the likely future of Hong Kong as a major international financial center? And how can we make Hong Kong a knowledge-based, innovation-based center? What can be done? Eddie, please.
Well, let me start with the role of Hong Kong as an international financial center in future. I think you can well predict what I would say. Of course, Hong Kong's role will be even more important in future. Several areas. One is our traditional intermediary role. I think it will be deepened. Hong Kong will continue and to be the most important gateway between China and the world. And as I said, I don't see financial decoupling happening. And I do see continued fund flows, capital flows between China and the world. And when you think about the global investors, in fact, I talked to most of them, they remain extremely interested in Chinese assets. Why? One, China's GDP is now 18% of the global GDP. And the holdings that they have on Chinese assets is more like 3-4%. There's still a long way to go for them to really match the two. And secondly, Chinese assets has almost zero correlation to the traditional assets. So if you are an asset manager, you will know the importance of diversification. So those flows will definitely continue to go in to Chinese capital markets. And if you look at where those flows come into China now, about 2/3 of the stock and bond flows actually comes through Hong Kong, through the stock and bond connects. So that trend will continue. But I think the more important trend in the next few years will be the capital coming out from China. It is beginning. If you look at the Wealth Management Connect, it's two-way. And it's the first time that individual wealth is allowed to come out to buy global wealth products. Where will that happen? It will be through Hong Kong. And same for Bond Connect southbound. It's the first time that institutional investors on the mainland can use their capital to buy global bonds. Again, it's through Hong Kong. So I think the two-way flows will only strengthen in the future, and Hong Kong's traditional intermediary role will only strengthen. There are also two new roles for Hong Kong as well. One is we've always got that second role, which is RMB offshore, the biggest RMB offshore center. But that role, that market will continue to grow, in my belief, quite significantly in the coming years. Because, well, if you look at the use of RMB in the international trade and investment, currently, China's external trade, only about 18% is done in RMB. That's way below any other countries like Europe, US, or even Japan. So the wider use of RMB in trade and probably in investment will almost be a certain trend. We need to build the infrastructure, etc. But with that wider use of RMB, you've got to have a place where you can provide RMB liquidity, or where the counterparts, trade counterparts of China, after they receive the RMB, they have a place to invest. And that place will be Hong Kong. two reasons. One is that there could be a preference to invest to the offshore market when there is a perception that there's free flow of capital, there's common law here, people feel a lot more at ease to invest in Hong Kong. And secondly, if you internationalize any currency, there's a price to pay, which is the impact on the capital accounts. If you want to keep the capital accounts partly closed, then you can rely on Hong Kong as the firewall. So I think that role will gradually grow in the next few years. And the third role will be our role in being the Asian voice in the latest financial trends in the world, including technology and ESG. And we need to do that because otherwise, Hong Kong will be more like an Asian financial center or even China's financial center and not a global financial center. We need to be at the forefront of these global trends. And that's one reason why we spend so much effort in developing projects in, for example, central bank digital currency. There's a project, a cross-border payment project using CBDC involving Hong Kong, China, UAE, and Thailand, which is the most progressive CBDC project in the world, not just in Asia. So that's where we want to position Hong Kong. Same for ESG. We talk a lot about the importance of environment, but the main places in Asia that needs transition is China and India. And I would imagine that a lot of these transition financing will happen in Hong Kong. And again, that's why we are so intent on developing the green finance, green bond, blended finance market here. So I thought those will be the roles of Hong Kong. And what do we need to do? A lot, of course. One main thing which I think is important is, if you think about an international financial center, it's about the ecosystem and also the opportunities. In fact, if you think about our ecosystem, it has remained unchanged in the last few years. The common law, the talent pool, the regulatory standard, etc. But what's changed is the perceptions of global investors on Hong Kong. So what we need to do is to change that perception by hosting conferences like this, by telling the Hong Kong story overseas. Of course, we need to upgrade our platforms as well. So the government efforts in creating better frameworks for family office, for virtual assets is very much welcome, and that's important. And we also need to work, again, like I said, on global issues like technology, like ESG, not just on our own, but probably together with the Great Bay Area. And that's something that I think we can further discuss later.
Thank you so much, Eddie. So important, so informative description of what is going on in Hong Kong and what needs to be done, where Hong Kong heading to. Thank you so much. Tong, let's turn to the financial market. How, say, from the financial market perspective, you see the role of Hong Kong as a major international financial center?
So we have touched upon globalization, and next I would like to talk about Hong Kong's role in globalization. Globalization, we were mainly talking about economic globalization, and Hong Kong will be a very important player in this regard. And there are several aspects. First, Hong Kong has always been a bridge between mainland China and the rest of the world. I think no matter it's in the past, present, or future, Hong Kong will continue to be the bridge, or even become a more important bridge that connects China and the rest of the world. And we have QDII before, and now we have Bond Connect, we have Stock Connect, we have ETF Connect, Wealth Management Connect, and I believe that there is still a lot of space for us to connect more. It benefits mainland China as well as the investors from outside of China. Our funding pool has been enriched because of all these Connect products. At the end of 90s, we can see that there has been a lot of progress, and all these kind of Connect products have enrich the offerings to the investors in China and all over the world. And we also distribute the products, financial products from China to the investors all over the world. So I believe that the role of Hong Kong as a bridge will only become bigger and bigger. And secondly, it's about the financial rules. As we have seen that Hong Kong has already set up rules for ESG disclosures, such like Eddie said, for legal framework and also the infrastructures Hong Kong has as the greatest advantage of the city. And this kind of role will only be enhanced in the future. And thirdly, Hong Kong can be positioned as the pivot for financial services in Asia or along the Belt and Road Initiative. When we visit Middle East with the chief executive, a lot of people asked the role of Hong Kong in the Belt and Road Initiative. What I can say is that Hong Kong can definitely play a pillar role in this regard. For Belt and Road Initiative, there was a biggest IPO in the world, and this company is from Hong Kong. And we have provided a lot of financing support, such as Islamic bonds and green bonds. And these offerings are from Hong Kong. And the biggest cross-border M&A project, which is a technology company, was also led by a Hong Kong enterprise. And the biggest metal exchange is also under Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So no one can doubt the capability of Hong Kong in terms of financial services. And the third role of Hong Kong is Hong Kong is an innovation hub for financial services. Since 2018, Hong Kong has launched a lot of measures related to financial innovations. For example, the funding for biomedicine. In 2022, Hong Kong has become the biggest center for biomedicine funding. And then we have launched the 18C listing rules. A lot of technology companies approach us and ask if they could come to Hong Kong and go listed here because of the 18C. So I believe that reform and innovation are very important for the city. And this is also helpful for the technology and innovation in Hong Kong. It could support the economic transition of the city. And end of last year, there's a coal climate carbon trading market mechanism. And I have been going to different places to promote this point. And I also encourage the enterprises from Greater Bay Area to participate in the mechanism. And Mr. Lai has mentioned about the carbon trading market in Guangzhou, and we can definitely partner with each other. So Hong Kong enjoys great advantages in all these fronts. Can Hong Kong become a knowledge and innovation-based economy? I think we have several supports. The first one is financial innovation. And technology companies can get funding in Hong Kong. And secondly, Hong Kong enjoys great tertiary education system. And recently, government has also launched several measures to attract international enterprises and talents to promote the economic transition in Hong Kong. And that's why I believe that it is very promising for Hong Kong to evolve into a knowledge and innovation-based economy.
So many roles Hong Kong can play in the future. Probably we need another dedicated session to discuss the role of Hong Kong in the future. Maybe Eddie and maybe Casey, maybe Zhihong, we should do it at some point. It's really exciting. So can you two be so brief about Hong Kong? Then we move to the third question.
Okay, just very briefly. I totally agree that there's a great potential for Hong Kong to develop further as an IFC. There's new opportunity that, as China is entering into this so-called high quality growth phrase, there will be new financing and investment opportunities. In terms of high quality growth, we have emphasized on opening further to the rest of the world. Given these political tensions, Hong Kong can play more role in helping mainland to further open to the rest of the world. And other high quality growth strategies such as green economy and also this shared economy, etc. In terms of green economy, I totally agree. Hong Kong can play a very important role in developing this green finance. As I know, Guangzhou is also trying to develop that, but Hong Kong is very international, as people just made comments today. And we can attract foreign capital into this region, perhaps much more easily than domestic centers. So that's something very important for Hong Kong to play. And another opportunity is the digital finance you just mentioned. The world is also entering into this economy that's very, very much dependent on digital technologies. For developed economies, almost over 50% of GDP now contributed by these digital technologies. China is also, it's about 40% of GDP is now dominated by digital industries. So therefore, to serve this digital economy, the further development of digital economy, digital finance is obvious the most appropriate tool for doing that. So we need to move away from some of the traditional ways of doing finance and moving into digital finance. Hong Kong is a particularly good place for doing that because Hong Kong has its strengths in its law and regulations. And it's understandable by the rest of the world. So therefore, we can experiment on regulations and laws on this new development, the digital development. And for example, the Web3 technology and fintech technology, mainland China knows its great potential, but since the economy is so big, so they want to see some test grounds, test results. If it's successful, if the risk is contained, then the whole country can move. So Hong Kong is the best place to test this kind of a new financial innovations, and then later on, can be adapted by the rest of the country. So therefore, I think in the new so-called high quality growth, Hong Kong has much important role to play than before.
Thank you. Nicolas, please, can we be a bit brief?
Yeah, understood that you start to become nervous about the time. I will try to keep my remarks brief. Just saying first that I think maybe a useful reminder to say that Hong Kong is a pretty unique place for being a financial center. I mean, in terms of tax environment, in terms of legal framework, in terms of level of education and availability of talent, in terms of forex also, being with a currency pegged to the US dollar and being at the same time the #1 renminbi offshore center. So I think there is a very solid ground on which to build, and I've understood from Eddie that there is a plan from HKMA to continue the process. So I will limit my remarks, which are also the remarks from the point of view of an issuer active in the energy sector. So I think I agree with everything that was said around carbon emission, trading, and I think there is room for an articulated carbon trading market here in Hong Kong in combination with the national scheme in the mainland, and I think it's a very important new development. My second remark would be around continuing to encourage fintech initiatives, because I think the finance of tomorrow is not going to be the same finance as the one we've known until now. So we need to think about the future, and then I think also we count on the HKMA plan, but we should be as issuers also innovative with the banks in order to create the sustainable finance framework of tomorrow. And just to illustrate that for CLP, we have started introducing back in 2017 a climate action financing framework, and it's really now a central part of how we raise funding, and we raise funding from investors, whether bond investors or equity investors, from basically every part of the world, all parts of the world, and to attract funding, you really need to move with a different approach. And we were with basically around less than 1/4 of our funding covered by this climate action framework, and last year in 22 we were with 2/3 of our funding covered by this framework. So there is room for progressing those issues and positioning Hong Kong as a major sustainable finance center. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Nicolas. So now let's move to the final set of questions. How about 10 more minutes? I'm already eating into the dinner time, so dinner will be very brief. Yes.
I'd like to ask a question.
我想问于先生一个问题。你都已经知道这个国际金融论坛都在南沙总部，但是我们想考虑了很长时间，南沙的这个金融岛是取替香港还是补充香港呢？我觉得我们是可以互为兼容的。南沙，你也可以考虑上海或者是深圳。就是如果他们在他们本地的这个金融发展可能会更有优势，但是如果讲到跨境的南沙、上海、深圳都是跟香港来做，这就很容易，大家都会受惠。考虑到这个互联互通的机制。这个如果是上海跟深圳都可以跟香港合作，这个不仅仅是资本市场，未来如果
treasury management schemes, we can actually also think about that kind of connection. So I think it's really complementary.
What specific area do you think Nansha should specialize in the coming years?
Well, I think there are, what immediately springs to mind are two areas. One, of course, is the corporate area, including, of course, the technology firms, plus the supply chains that's linking Hong Kong and Great Bay Area. Basically, Hong Kong, in terms of the value chain, the manufacturing chain, is very integrated between Hong Kong trading firms and the factories and other firms in Great Bay Area. So if there should be a way of linking them up so that the financing, for example, from Hong Kong can flow from here through the supply chains into Nansha, into the firms, especially the SMEs, I think that will help a lot. That's one area. The second area is, of course, the climate area. I always think that, if you think about the transition financing needs of the whole of China, and if you just zoom in Greater Bay Area, it will be tremendous. And we really hope that Hong Kong can play a role in channeling the global capital into the Greater Bay Area for climate transition. And one way is to make use of the financial markets here. One good precedent example is the fact that the Shenzhen municipal government actually issued 2 tranches of green bonds in Hong Kong. And that sets a very good example for other corporates to follow suit. If they can come to Hong Kong's market, tap the global capital, get the funding into Nansha, and then do it for climate purposes, that would be ideal. And of course, we will very much welcome the Guangzhou municipal government to come to Hong Kong to issue bonds as well. Green bonds, social bonds, I think that will be extremely helpful. So I think it's, at least in these 2 areas, that we can collaborate a lot more.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Han. You are helping me to go through this 3rd question already. So let me just ask whether there's any final reflections, among the panelists regarding this question. Greater Bay Area development, how Hong Kong and the area working together to further enhance mutual benefit, mutual development. Any further comments? Maybe some.
Yeah, just briefly, just continuing this question. I think Great Bay Area is one of the most innovative, most competitive, most open economies, regional economies in the world, in China. In terms of the role of Hong Kong in serving this part of the economy, one thing it's important is that we know Great Bay Area, especially Shenzhen and Guangzhou, very innovative economy. So there are a lot of small enterprises, a lot of new ideas, great ideas. Hong Kong, on the other hand, is more concentrated on service economy and the financial sector. So how these two, kind of combine, and how Hong Kong to serve this innovative economy is very important, because that's also, the major idea of high quality growth is innovation-driven economy. So Hong Kong's financial system also need to be innovation-driven financial economy to help that, to match that. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can supplement one point here, which is I fully agree. As I said, Hong Kong is good in the financing part. Great Bay Area is really good in the innovation and technology part. If the firms there can rely on Hong Kong to do the financing, whether it's bond, equity, or bank lending, I think it would be a good fit. But what's also needed for that to happen is the flow of, not just flow of capital, but the flow of data. This is something that we are actually pursuing, starting with credit reference for commercial enterprises. If the banks or the market here do not have the data regarding the firms in the Greater Bay Area, it's extremely hard for them to do any credit decisions. So that flow of data, 2-way, will be something that we want to pursue as well.
Thank you so much. Nicolas?
Just one remark to insist on, in my view, the importance of infrastructure as a foundation of future growth and future development of the Greater Bay Area. Whether we talk about energy, that's our business, but same goes for water management or waste management, and obviously interconnection and internet highways. I think investing in a seamless infrastructure in the region is a very important foundation for the future development of the Greater Bay Area, which means we need to articulate investment and coordinate investment between the 2 sides of the border. And I think that paves the way for a great future for the region.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. Tong, please.
我们之前呢，可能讨论的是比较多的，讲了。
We had been talking a lot about mutual market access, and I'd like to talk a bit about integration now. the bigger Bay Area, as far as integration, we still need to innovate as far as the mechanism is concerned. For example, the two places, the qualifications recognitions of the professionals of the two places. I think this is something that we can work on, including product recognition. This has been something that we have been doing for a couple of years. For example, cross-border financial dispute mechanisms such as arbitration. These are the things that we need to work on to further integrate. And with Hong Kong, we are mainly talking about, with the Greater Bay Area, we are mainly talking about finance integration. And that would involve the regulators who would need to be a lot more innovative in order to push this further.
Casey. making Casey very nervous. But anyway, I'm already about 10 minutes passing the timeline, and I would prefer or like very much to give the final opportunity to give to Eddie to a few words to wrap up the discussion.
Well, the way I look at globalization is that it's going to continue, especially in the financial area. Decoupling is not going to happen for the global financial system. And the connection between China and the world will continue and strengthen. And Hong Kong will be the place where most of this will happen. So if you've got a chance, invest in Hong Kong, use Hong Kong, expand your institution here. I'm doing advertising, I'm sorry.
Great. Well done, well said. Thank you so much for all the panelists, just great discussion. I wish that we'll have time to continue, but well, let's do it another time. With that, let's wrap up this discussion. Let me invite Mayor Lai to come on the stage. We have a group photo. Please.
All right.
赖市长，你请你过来，我们这个合影，对。
Thank you again. Thank you for the panel. Thank you for all these very insightful, in-depth, and constructive discussions. And thank you very much to our audience for taking the time, for your patience. And thank you, our media friends, for coming today. We have a very good event today, and I hope you have a very good weekend. Thank you. Thank you.